happy and thankful that we are a voice of hope, of just desire and want. I think that's the thing that's touching souls around the country, that that down and out person, that person that no one believes in, that person that no one desires, that person that stepped over and stepped by and stepped through and stepped past, that we represent that person, because no one wants to see what we're doing. They don't want to see us accomplish what we're doing. And I said, and I will reiterate this: you got to be crazy if you can't see the direction that we're headed. And I'm so happy and thankful to be the head coach of this wonderful university.
Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com. Again, joined by football analyst William Gardner. William, it was nice to see two programs have respect for each other. And Lincoln Riley handled himself with class throughout the week, and we got an entertaining football game. Some of that drama that's created by other head coaches, it was nice to take a break from that, right?
Yeah, no stupid comments and no, backhanded put downs and what have you. And so, it's nice. You go back to the first game of the season, and Sonny Dykes is a class coach,
Yeah.
and it was, and so we didn't really get any of that. What we had leading up to that game was everybody else in the country saying we were going to get waxed and no good and blah, blah, blah. But then the last 2 weeks with Jay Norvell and Dan Lanning, you get just stupid comments. And then, so it's nice to go against Southern Cal, which is maybe it's a sense of security thing. Southern Cal's been Southern Cal for 100 years. So, and Lincoln Riley has been there, done this at Oklahoma, and is just a class guy. So I just really appreciated both him and his team and the class that they showed throughout the game.
They can figure out their defense. That could be a national championship contender right there. Caleb Williams is just a special college quarterback. Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support, but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. Ralphie 6, is this something we can talk about yet, or do we just kind of avoid the topic?
I don't know. I don't know if that Buffalo's still a baby or what, but not impressive. And then watching the replay on the DVR, it was clear that the whole stadium looked white, like it's a snowfall or something. So that was impressive. Going back real quick and I guess we'll get into this a little bit, but that Southern Cal team, for all the people that are picking at this, picking at that, that's a loaded team, man. They got the best defensive tackle in the country. They got the best quarterback in the country. They're loaded with receivers, top to bottom. They got a good coach. They got a top running back. And I guess we'll talk more about this, but I just want to say that they've got a heck of a team out there. And I don't know, it's one of those weird situations where a loss kind of almost feels like a win.
Yeah, there's different reasons for that, and I definitely want to get into some of that. You just veered around the Ralphie 6 comment pretty good there. I did a lot of interviews with the Ralphie crew. Taylor Stratton, who runs that program, just that whole group of people. They're such awesome people, and Ralphie 6 has such a unique story. Being kind of an orphan and being raised early on by a cow. And they told me that she was always going to be a little bit smaller because of just kind of her beginning in life. And I hope she has a comeback story. I'm not giving up on Ralphie 6 yet.
Well, the wife, I always got to bring my wife into these podcasts at some point. And I guess this is a good time as any. She said, she's so cute. Like, I don't want a cute mascot. I want a scary, run Tom Osborne over mascot. Jesus, I don't want cute. I want a cute. We'd get the koala bear or something.
Well, Ralphie 5 was intense. And that's why they ended up having to retire her when they did, because not that she was slowing down, she was just kind of had a mind of her own. And you got to be smart about this thing when you're talking about people being down on the field. If a live buffalo decides that it wants to have a streak of independence, you got to let her go into retirement, because that could not be great. We even saw it with Ralphie 5's first run in a spring game. She got loose, and so you got to be careful about that. But everything I've heard is that Ralphie 6 is much more adept to enjoy being around people, whereas Ralphie 5 was kind of this competitor. Ralphie 6 is more of a bison / buffalo of the people. Do you take that?
I don't think Coach Prime wants to be around either one of them.
Somebody in the press box was telling me that the reason there's a delay between Ralphie running and the rest of the team is not just because of Coach Prime, but there are other people on the program that are scared to death.
Oh, geez. Wow. Crazy.
So we had DeBaby, Kevin Garnett, The Truth, Paul Pierce, Warren Sapp, Terrell Owens, CC Sabathia. Will Ferrell was up in the boxes. We didn't see him. Simba, I guess, is a big deal. A lot of celebrities. Do any of those names do anything for you?
I don't know. You know, some of them were kind of cool. Kevin Garnett, CC Sabathia, and Will Ferrell's funny, but I think it had as much to do with the California, the Hollywood team USC being here, and we're still the big national story, and this game didn't hurt that one bit. I mean, that comeback and the grit that this team showed, and Shador showed himself again as a Heisman candidate, and really, in some senses outdueled the returning Heisman winner. So, all those people are going to keep coming to our games. I don't know that they'll go to away games or not, but I would expect to still see, those kind of rosters of stars on our sidelines at all games going up. I mean, it's like I was looking at that picture, the 4-star wide receiver prep kid, getting his picture taken with Terrell Owens, right? It's like, well, that doesn't hurt.
No. Yeah, I wanted to get a picture with Paul Pierce because I'm a big Celtics fan. Everybody knows that. And my wife and her whole side of the family are Kansas Jayhawks. So got a strong appreciation for him. But he was doing like an Instagram live when I was about to go up to him. And then I had some other stuff to do work-wise. So I didn't get that done. But hopefully Paul comes back out to Boulder and I can get that done. I was
go ahead. I don't know. Yeah, that just strikes a memory and a segue. Sorry, everybody. Here we go. But back in the 80s, when I was at CU, my best friend and we used to go to Nuggets games, and nobody went to the Nuggets games back then. And we'd get top row seats and move down. And we always wanted to be at the Celtics game and the Lakers game because we hated those teams, and their fans talked so much trash, and we'd always get in fights and get thrown out and whatever. But when you said Celtics fan, I was like, back in the 80s, we probably would have duked it out outside of McNichols Arena.
I'm not going to fight over the Boston Celtics, but I'm a big fan. Jaylen Brown, Derek White, of course, CU ties there. I was walking in, and Peter King was trying to find the press box, one of the most famous sports writers out there. And so I was showing him the way. I got a chance to talk with him for a little bit. And he basically said, I don't do college football. Like this is another example of what Coach Prime is doing is completely transformative in terms of just bringing eyes on Boulder, Colorado. And he wrote a story about Shador a well-received story out there.
Yeah, I just read that before we came on and started this. So that was a really nice, well done story. It's nice when you read good writers, you can tell the difference. And so that's a lot of fun, but it's fun to bring that kind of thing on there. I don't know what sparked this in my mind, but I'd like to shout out to Brendan Rice showed a lot of class in this whole thing, and he played a damn good game. And people want to look down on him and give him the business, but I don't blame the kid for not wanting to play on that team he was on here. Especially when there's an opportunity to go play at a team like he's on now. So he showed a lot of class and dignity towards CU, and I really appreciated that.
He loved Boulder. If Mel Tucker had stayed, or they had, and that's a whole other debate. We don't need to do that right now.
Right.
But if there was a coach that he really bought into at CU, I don't think Brendan Rice leaves. He really did kind of embrace Boulder and enjoyed living here. And there were some live videos out there, but I think it was more Keith Miller, his buddy, that was doing some of the derogatory stuff against CU. I've been happy to see Brendan have that success out there because there were times when you questioned how many guys on this team give a crap. You never wondered that about Brendan Rice. He always gave complete effort. He was a joy to watch, returning kickoffs, and he would win those 50-50 balls, those matchups. He would come down with the ball consistently. It's ironic. The one that he didn't was where Nico Reed stole it away from him out in Los Angeles last year for the Buffs. But I'm happy for Brendan, and I'm definitely going to be cheering him on the rest of the way.
Yeah, and that was just a pleasant sort of piece of the game. It could have been, entirely different, but he handled it well, and so I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up.
Well, that kind of segues me into a feeling I've had the last couple of weeks, and it's been 2 losses now. Last week against Eugene, it was not pretty to watch that, and it was fun, entertaining to watch this comeback, 48-41. But even in those losses, the different feeling that you have is so. It's a year ago that Carl Durrell was fired. A year ago, we thought this program was dead, and now you bring up Brendan Rice. What was kind of the issue before? Colorado was becoming a farm system for all other college football programs. They were developing guys, and if they blew up, you didn't blame them because they wanted to win. They wanted to get exposure. They wanted to go to the NFL. Now you almost have the complete reverse feeling, William, and you're kind of auditioning for your job at Colorado right now if you're not a star.
Right.
Whereas you're not a farm system, you're going to be pulling guys from other teams the way that schools used to do from CU.
Well, and I think you just hit on what happened at halftime on this team in part. And I wasn't there, and I haven't seen the video from it, but I have to imagine, given the guys like Cormani McClain and Omarion Miller that came out, that at some point, however it was said, Coach Prime said, "Look, you know what? I'm going to throw people on the field this half, and we're going to find out who the dogs are. And if you ain't a dog, you ain't going to play the rest of the way, and you ain't going to be here next year." So to your point, it was an audition. He put 2 true freshmen out there, and they balled out and kicked ass, and Reggie Young had to take that right tackle spot, and he did a pretty credible job filling in, for Washington being out. So it was nice to see some guys step up along those lines. But I do think that that's exactly what's going on this team, is that Coach Prime is telling guys, you're in a constant audition for your job and place on this roster, and you better keep on doing something and showing something. And I think there's a lot more left to come. I wrote a note to myself as I was watching. It's like Cormani McClain finally arrives. Omarion Miller finally arrives. Reggie Young comes out and does a good job. Who's next? Okay. Who else on this roster is going to blow up in the next 10 weeks? And I guarantee you somebody else will. And it won't be just one, because a lot of these guys are still, getting their feet underneath them and fitting into the systems and what have you. The coaches are still getting to know them. And there will be each week, I would expect, other people that step forward and finally start to show up and show what they can do. And I don't think this team is anywhere near its potential, even just. Now, I'm not talking big picture. I'm talking this year. I don't think we've seen anything close to the best CU team we're going to see this year, and part of that's going to be helped by the fact that we're not going to be facing top 10 teams anymore.
The air was just perfect on Saturday morning at Folsom Field. I love the 10 a.m. kickoffs where you get kind of that crisp air during pregame. I don't know what their final record is going to be this year. I predicted 6-6, and that kind of looks kind of how it's in line. Were you 7-5?
No, I said 6-6 as well.
I can see 7-5, but there is something very special budding in Boulder, and there's no denying that feeling. And it's kind of, again, combined with just the feelings we used to have and why Colorado's so special. And it's so cool to see people actually across the country take notice of it.
Well, I think Big Noon was there again Saturday morning
Yep.
on campus, and they got to experience that. And, the nation got to see those guys out there in their shirts. And, everybody thinks, hey, it's the frozen tundra of Boulder, right? But what they saw was this beautiful place where people are hanging out and having a lot of fun. And that's sort of the message that's getting sent. I was saying to the wife, I'm going to be very curious to see if there's a significant increase in admission or in applications to the university in general this year as a result of all this, because you can't buy this kind of publicity, and it's all good, and it's all good publicity. But the experience of being in Boulder for a game like that on a morning like that, and I mean that's really I guess that's probably why I love college football so much, because that's what I got to do back in the 80s, is be part of that and be,
Yeah.
even when you're part of the program, you show up early in the morning and you're out there in the stadium before anybody gets there. And it's just kind of magical.
I've got a bunch of random notes from the game. Should I just start going down the list here?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably touch on a lot. There's a lot of things that I want to say in terms of, I don't know, sort of the larger sense of the feeling of the game and the feeling of what's going on in Boulder, and then talking about the game itself. Of course, here's the thing. I went back and I went very carefully through that first half and the first part of the third quarter, and really graded it out. And you know what? We were playing pretty darn good on both sides of the ball in the first half. We just made some really bad mistakes, and they capitalized on them, which is what good teams do. And I'm gonna tell you something else. I thought long and hard about whether even part of me, I don't even want to talk about the offensive line anymore, because everybody's got their mind made up and none of them know what they're talking about. But I watched that offensive line and they looked pretty good in that first half, which probably sounds surprising because we didn't actually, that wasn't the half when our offense exploded, but it wasn't because of the offensive line that we had troubles in the first half. Really, watching it again, and it's funny how you don't catch this live when you're watching it because it just happened so fast. But Shadur kind of struggled in the first half, and his wide receivers and he were not on the same page.
Yeah.
And there was I don't know if confusion is the right word. They just weren't primed, I guess, for lack of a better word. They weren't in sync. And the play calling just seemed to be off a little bit, but the running game was good, and watching it again on a big screen where I could back it up and watch it again. My impressions for the game when I actually watched it live were different watching it. I was like, well, this offensive line actually did a pretty good job throughout that first half and into the first part of the second half, in both the run game and the pass protection. But that being said, I think until they got the run game, USC was just loading up the front and sending six guys every time, and it's kind of hard to pick that up sometimes. And they had a lot of delayed blitzes and things like that. So I came away from watching the game live thinking, man, Jack Bailey's not going to get it done. And I watched it again, and he actually looked pretty good. So,
and I thought Sean Lewis helped that offense with his play calling.
Yeah.
And it wasn't perfect. And I want to ask you, William, you've been around on BuffStampede.com, I think pretty much the whole time I've been the publisher, at least a very long portion of that. Has Colorado's fan base ever truly loved an offensive coordinator?
I don't know. No, we haven't any. I mean, it's not like there's been a lot of them that were successful to really enjoy.
Well, Brian Lindgren is my example. He was not great, but with the pieces he had, I always thought he was pretty solid with his play calling and his concepts of Colorado. And he got hammered a lot of the time, and I would kind of defend him. It's like, I don't know if it's because of like a Madden thing that everybody feels like they can call plays because they've done it on video games or what that is. And it's very clear, okay, when something doesn't work, well, you should have called something else. But it's like, well, you don't know that's how the defense is teed up. It's a game of chess.
Right.
It wasn't perfect, but I enjoyed that game and what Sean Lewis did on Saturday.
And the wife watched it the second time around as I was going back and forth until she got bored with me reversing and forwarding. And I said, well, that's what a coach does. But, at one point she's like, well, what happened on that play? I was like, they made the right call. They sent a guy where we didn't have a guy. And that's the way it goes. The guy on the other side is trying to do his job too. And Grinch has been around a while. But it is funny that sort of the vitriol that's being aimed at Lewis for an offense, that's scored 35 or more points in 4 out of 5 games, and the one exception was against a truly top 5 team. So I don't know. We throw the ball well. We ran the ball well on Saturday. I was keeping track as I was going back through the midpoint of the third quarter. We faced 5 times that we had third and short, or like I think there was a second or third and goal, and we got those all 5 times running between the tackles. So don't tell me this team can't run, and don't tell me that this offensive line can't play, because I will sit down and watch the film with anybody that wants to sit down, and I'll show you. You don't want to sit down and watch the film and shut your pie hole because you don't know what you're talking about. But
It was funny though. It was funny watching those plays though, because they got just enough on every single one of those. But that's all that matters. No, I said that to somebody in the press box. I said they moved the chains, and we have not seen that from the ground game until today. And part of that's because we just didn't see a whole lot of the ground game. So that was nice to see.
Yeah, and out of those 5 times, it wasn't trickery or running outside. It was right behind the dang guards. Now the one play on the goal line was interesting because they did an unbalanced line, and all of the linemen except the center were on the right, and the only guy on the left was a tight end. Which I worked in offense a couple of years for a coach who believed in the unbalanced line concept, and so I coached his offensive line. And the theory is you're shifting, you're making them make a choice between the field and the formation and what have you. But it also gives you a whole wall of big guys. But that was a fun sort of innovation to see them use, and I don't think the average fan probably even caught it. But for an offensive line coach, I was geeking out on that. Like, we got to watch that several times.
I enjoy that too. Marshawn Lloyd, you mentioned that USC has a pretty darn good running back.
Yeah.
That first touchdown run, that looked like a video game run, didn't it?
God. Yeah. Well, and Taj Alston had him. I mean, had him, hands on him even, and he spun out. And I don't know who was supposed to have contained in that, but you can't even really fault the defense. That's just a great player making a great play.
Jaquez Robinson got the start, but you mentioned Cormani McClain earlier. He got the bulk of the snaps there. Cormani kind of looks like a teenage deer is kind of the analogy I use for guys that are like, they're going to be so fluid and so good, but they're still kind of figuring out things a little bit, and just kind of the way he attacks things, because the speed of the game is different than what he's used to. But, I kept saying, be patient with this kid. It's going to take some time. He's not going to be a finished product by the end of this year, but from everything I hear, that Cormani loves it in Boulder. So as things stand right now, he got I don't even know. It wasn't that he got called out by Coach Prime, because Coach Prime was asked about him. So it's not like he was trying to make a point, but that message through the media seemed to get through to Cormani, and maybe that's the best thing for him right now, is some tough love to kind of get him to fake it till you make it, and just in terms of being a complete product at this level.
Well, Coach Prime is, he's the best, probably the best defensive back in the history of football at any level. So when he's talking, you need to listen to him, and especially when you're playing the exact same position as him. But he also he is a deep and caring person, and he cares about these guys. And so, you kind of have to trust him a little bit to bring them along at the rate he sees fit. But it was one thing about a cornerback, you put him out there too early and he gets smoked and he's not ready, and he could lose all of his confidence and all kinds of bad things. But I think they've done a good job and developed other players. And here's another thing. Somebody talked about our Swiss cheese defense. We went against a top 10 team, and 3/4 of the secondary that started game one was out. Right. So we were putting this thing back together, with second, third teamers, and so it was nice for Cormani to come on in this particular game, and it looked to me like towards the end of the game that Caleb Williams wasn't even throwing to his side anymore, because they put him on whoever was on that receiver, and then he covered that guy, and the one pass breakup in the end zone really showed the value of length and those long arms, and he got that arm up in there and busted it away, and then really you look at his reaction after that play, how excited he was, and the fire, and it's like that you got to feel good about that, you
Yeah.
know, and I don't know why. I'm going to segue just real quick here. During the week there was a video of Travis Hunter meeting with Henry Blackburn, and I just want to point that out because that to me says more about Coach Prime and who he is, and Travis Hunter and who he is, than anything anybody else could have said or done. And I was just very touched by the way that all played out, and that Travis Hunter was the one that set that whole thing up, and that it played out that way. Um, but I think that speaks not only to him but also to Coach Prime and the kind of impact that he has on young men. That they're quality people that are playing for us in Boulder and not just football players.
That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. And if you go back to our post CSU show, I think both of us put more blame on the head coach than we did that kid, right? I mean, the way that those guys were kind of revved up for that game, set up for a moment like that. And I didn't put as much blame on Henry Blackburn as I did their head coach.
Well, when you saw it, when you watched that game, and there was multiple different incidents like that, it was very clear that they were coached, all coached and hyped up to play that way. And at the end of the day, that's got to come down to the head coach. So they got a head coach that's coaching them to be a dirty team, and we got a head coach that's coaching us to win and have class doing it.
And to throw up some Rolexes in the process, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's going to be the enduring image from this year for a while until we get something else to follow it up. But I don't know.
How have we gotten this far into it? I think you mentioned Omari and Miller at one point, but we've gotten too far into this podcast without talking about that. That, as I mentioned to Brian after the game, that was no fluke, and I'm not expecting 196 yards every half out of Omari and Miller going forward, but just the way that he ran those routes, it was a thing of beauty. Very precise. Yeah. That was like veteran receiver stuff, and he's physically not a veteran. He's on the skinnier side, but just the way he was operating was really impressive.
And not to turn a negative out of it, but the contrast between him and Javon Antonio was striking in that respect, in that the freshman was much more polished and precise and careful and disciplined in his routes and everything else. So he was super impressed. That little hitch and run was fantastic. And then that the touchdown catch where he's sort of sliding the other direction and going back this way. I mean, I'd be in the orthopedic unit today, getting straightened back out after that particular thing. But it just kind of goes to show you, and that's what I said earlier, is there are guys still yet to break out on this team, and I suspect we're going to see a lot more of that this fall before this season is done. And I like what Coach Prime had to say after the game about both of those kids. Was both Cormani and Omarion. How did he put it? He said they both exceeded their negatives from before, or something like that.
From yesterday,
they kind of put their negatives from yesterday behind them. He said, now, but this is what we're going to expect from now on. You have to be at this level from now on, right? So, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, really, to be held to that level. And this is now we know what you can do. So if you don't produce this, we know you're dogging it.
Yeah, if Omarion and Cormani stick around with Coach Prime throughout their college career, they're going to be NFL players getting paid because of what they've learned from him. I think that's pretty clear. Yeah. What the heck happened on that block punt? I've watched it a bunch of times. Mark Bassett's going for the rugby style. They're not blocking for that. USC's not even really trying to block this punt. But that was miscommunication. That can't happen at this level.
Well, I don't understand what the hell he was thinking, and I'm just going to go back and say, you make fun of me about kickers and punters, and then every damn year they prove me right. I don't know.
We're going to turn it into a whole thing, aren't we?
Well, hey, it was all good and it was all fun to poke fun at me, over kickers and punters, but it's like it's not that they did a rollout kick; it's that he just ran and ran and ran. It's like kick the damn ball. I mean, the idea is to get a little bit outside, It's not to run halfway to the sidelines. So I don't know what he was thinking. I can't believe he was coached to do that. That was just silly. It was just a stupid play. It was just like I can't even put words to it. It's like Shador trying to throw it directly to the other guy on purpose. I don't know.
By the way, Shador's best play might have been when he got the ball tipped up and he had a pass breakup basically out of the other defensive lineman's hands that could have been a pick. And I don't know if you remember that play. I think it was first half.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
it was 4:04 left in the first. Yeah, I really enjoyed that play from him. What else here? You got to love just the diversity in Boulder right now. I think I've lived in Colorado for 20 years now, and I've enjoyed raising our kids here. The one downfall to me was that, this just isn't the most diverse place. And to see Boulder the way it is now in terms of in how Coach Prime is unifying everybody, he preaches unity. And he even made a point on Undisputed on national TV about how beautiful this is. And when they pan to the crowd, and it's just the student section probably needs a little bit more diversity going forward, but I've enjoyed just seeing different folks come together for a common goal in terms of cheering CU on. And that's just another reason that Coach Prime is a unique individual, and his ability to connect with everybody of different, both genders and different ethnicities. And I've enjoyed that so much.
Well, I don't know. There's something about Deion Sanders, man. The guy hands out hope and joy like he's handing out candy out of his pocket. You just get around the guy, and it's infectious the way he feels and the way he approaches life, and you just believe that whatever he's going to do. And people now are starting to say things like, well, everybody knows he's going to win a national championship because he just doesn't fail at anything. And it's exciting to me to see him bring in, some idiot wrote an article, I guess it was in USA Today, about one of the rappers being there and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? Get out of your ivory tower, your lily white safe zone, and stop judging other people. I think it's important that Coach Prime is bringing in a wide variety of different guys like this, and people in Boulder having exposure to people like that, different kinds of backgrounds and what have you. So I think it's exciting and fun, and the kids love it. And if you think that's a black mark, you're an idiot, in my view. But none of us are perfect and have lived a perfect life, but I'm excited by it, and it's fun, and it's a different sort of angle on what's going on, and it's a different motivational tool for kids. And you got to come up with different ways to motivate, because it's a long season. Actually it's a year-round sport anymore, and so you got to find those different ways, and you got to reach kids where they live and where they come from. And I'm very impressed with what he's doing. And so I don't know if knew this, but Coach Prime is the motivation coach for the CU hospital down in Denver, to help them keep their staff motivated and working hard and safe and working hard for everybody else. And so, I told the wife, if you find out he's coming to your floor and I don't get a call, somebody's going to be in a doghouse. But it's exciting, and he sent out videos that they've done to all the staff there to kind of get them fired up and keep them motivated to do their very difficult jobs and what have you. So he's not just a football coach; he's really taken on a lot of roles within the university and helping lots of different aspects of the university. And I enjoy his commercials.
I don't know the whole backstory with DaBaby and the controversy there. It was something he said at a concert, I guess, but I know that he really tied that song "Levitating" with Dua Lipa together. So props to him for his artistic ability. And I haven't. I'll have to go read that story after we stop recording here.
At my age, that's him and Dua Lipa are my favorite performers.
Well, there you go. They're talented artists. So the Omarion Cooper cornerback blitz with 10:17 left. I think that was that in the second quarter?
Yeah. So that was first half.
First half. That looked like Chidobe Awuzie's freshman year, didn't it?
as I saw it come, I could see it coming somehow out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" But watching it on replay on TV on the big screen, I was even more impressed with it because he had the discipline and the technique to avoid a targeting, okay, and to put a clean hit on without leading with his helmet and all those kinds of things that you watch for so carefully anymore. And it was just a really clean hit, and you know, you got to be something special not to be in the court back of your mind wondering if that's coming again. I mean,
Yeah.
we talk a lot about Shador getting hit, but he hadn't been hit like that, I don't think, this year that I can recall. But that was a beautiful play, and again, just dialed up the right play at the right time because they didn't have somebody over there to pick him up. And I don't know if it specifically was called to come from his blind side so he wouldn't see it coming, but it was just really nice.
Yeah. Omarion Cooper, the other Omarion, we got a couple
Right.
Omarion guys now. He hasn't been perfect by any stretch this year. He always seems to be competing. I have enjoyed watching his effort level out there this year. He makes mistakes from here and there, but you never worry about whether Cooper has that want to factor in him. He's even in that Oregon game, he was one of the few guys that was actually solo tackling, Oregon
Right.
players where, most guys were getting punished by them. Shador said after the game that his ankle was bugging him. You mentioned Savion Washington. He left the game with an ankle injury. Zay Weaver has been dealing with an ankle injury. He played through it on Saturday. So some guys dealing with ankle injuries right now. You were going back and forth with somebody on the message board, I think, about Mikey Harrison, right? There's still like a narrative out there that
Well, I wasn't too much involved in it. But it was somebody. I think somebody was praising Brewster, and then somebody took him to task for praising Brewster because he's got a walk on tight end or something, blah blah blah. And I think that's kind of silly. It's like, isn't that a good coaching job if you take what you got and turn it into a weapon? So
well, maybe that's CU PTSD from
right.
walk-ons like Cody Crawford doing end rounds and guys that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
Right.
Mikey Harrison has been solid this year. Like, he's legitimately been good out there.
Well, he's beyond solid. I mean, he's a weapon. He's something that they have to account for, or he's going to hurt them really bad with a touchdown or a long reception or a first down. I mean, I think he's got a first down or a touchdown in every single game this year, right?
Well, he ties for
recall.
the team lead in scoring right now, so that's another thing to throw
There you
in
go.
there.
Yeah. Well, and that's what a tight end is. I mean, that. So I've been saying for years, and I remember getting taken to task for it when we had LaVisca. Why would you throw the ball to a tight end when you got LaVisca? Because when you throw to the tight end, it makes it easier to get the ball to LaVisca, which may sound counterintuitive, but it's true. And they're using we're using him in the way that you're supposed to use a tight end. Okay, and he's sometimes he's a primary target, but he's also a safety valve in many ways. That one touchdown that he had, I think it was against CSU. He adjusted to the defense and he provided an outlet for Shador to throw the ball, and he wasn't the first or second option on that play. But that's how you use a tight end. You get him into mismatches with linebackers and things like that. And then let him outmatch those guys. So you're providing a problem for the defense that now they have to account for, not only in the game, but in practice before the game. So they have to scheme for this guy. And I don't know, we get Travis Hunter back and we have Omarion Miller and Zay Weaver and Jimmy Horn. And I don't know how defenses are going to scheme for these guys. I really don't. One thing I agree with, that we've seen, we need to get more putting the ball in Dylan Edwards' hands out on the edges. And I like that little sort of open gate sweep that they've done to him several times and let him get out there and use his ability to avoid guys. So, and we had him on a wheel route where he ran away from a linebacker again, but sure didn't see him, and I think he got some pressure after that and missed him on that. But I think that play is going to score again before the season's over with.
Cameron Silman Craig, third interception of the season. I think he's firmly established himself in that star role. No matter what happens, you hope to get Shiloh Sanders back this coming week, going down to Arizona State. And maybe Trevor Woods didn't have his best performance as a Buff on Saturday, but he's been solid enough this year, and he's had a couple picks of his own. I think the safety / star role is pretty defined at this point. Maybe Miles Slusher comes back at some point. We thought he was out there on Saturday pregame because there was somebody working with the defensive backs wearing 18, which is what Miles Slusher wore in the opener. But it turns out Adam Hopkins, who was a 4-star signing in the 2023 class, is wearing 18, working as a defensive back right now. He had a tackle on special teams. Isaiah Harge is playing defensive back as well. So just a couple corrections there in terms of their secondary personnel. Any more thoughts as they go on a 20-0 run to end this game? And I have a strong feeling, and Coach Prime kind of alluded to this, that if there was more time left on that clock, Colorado finds a way to come back in this game. They had all the momentum at that point, just not enough time. And I don't know, do you want to go in depth on the final scoring drive? Because that's been a pretty hot button topic with Colorado getting the ball back at 5:58 and taking their time. And it was something that Joel Klatt mentioned a lot on the broadcast. To me, I look more back at things like the block punt on Bassett that stick in your craw more about this football game than what happened on that drive with 6 minutes left, because the odds were stacked against you at that point. But I also get that it's frustrating to see running plays in that situation. So I'm not trying to downplay any frustration, but they did end up scoring, and they had an opportunity with an onside, which going into that drive with 6 minutes left, you're probably going to take that, even though it's not ideal odds for you to win the football game.
Well, I think it's a learning opportunity for Shedeur, and I think it's a learning opportunity for Lewis, and they need to clean that up and get it better. And he needs to, if he's gonna audible into different calls, he needs to have different options, I guess. But you also want to be you also have first priority is to score. Okay.
Yeah.
Second priority is to save the clock, and quite frankly, your bigger issue is, how do we use the 3 timeouts before then? I mean, that's where we probably got to look, right? It's like, where did we lose all those 3? And one of them I remember distinctly, the last one we used, I was like, man, damn it, I wish that seemed like there was a screw up of some kind on defense, I think, and we called that timeout. And we thought, well, we're going to need, I don't know if I can't remember at what point in the game, if we were close enough that we thought it was an issue. But quite frankly, the use of the 3 timeouts earlier in the game is just as big of an issue, that block punt. So, and then I just look back at the struggles between Shedeur and his receivers in that first half, and you think there was a lot of missed opportunities on there. There were some, broken coverages, and you know what I wrote down about the second half, as you and I talked last week. We said those first 2 games, this team came out with an attitude, with a chip on their shoulder, with, up yours, we're going to show you what we got. And I was watching that second half, and I was like, they got it back. They got it back. And I don't know what happened in the locker room, but they found it again, and they came out with it. And on defense, they were flying around. Guys were going nuts. I mean, Derek McClendon gets credit for that last sack on Caleb Williams. Do you know who flushed him out?
Caleb Williams on the last play?
Or no, not the last play of the game, but that big sack that Derek McClendon got a sack. And it was Shane Coxton who did a really nice move on the left tackle and beat him and forced Caleb Williams out of the tackle for Derek McClendon to get that sack, and it just seemed to me like they picked up their whole, I don't know, pace and whatever, they get one, and saying the word pace makes me think of another thing I like about Lewis. He and Shedeur are able to speed it up and slow it down. And I really enjoy that they're not stuck with one thing. So like they can go high tempo, and they really wore that Southern Cal defense out. I felt like in the early part of the game with some tempo. And then by the end of the game, those guys were a little gassed, and that hurt them. But I just felt like they came out of that in that second half. And I remember I heard, I think it was in his after the game press conference, Prime was talking about what he said. And I want to say it was something along the lines of um, show me what you got. Show me. I know you've got more than this, and I know you can do better than this. Let's get it fixed. And I saw his halftime comments, and he said, "Look, we're playing well. We're just making mistakes and giving them points." And they got that cleaned up. And if we could play a complete game, first half and a second half, man, we're going to hurt some teams.
I don't like moral victory. I agree with Shador, who said that he doesn't even know what that means, because it is kind of what's the word I'm looking for? An oxymoron, where
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense, But what do you think about a momentum loss? Because that's what I felt like this was. Instead of, teams talk about this was a moral victory and they fight back against that, but there was no way around the fact that in post game you could see it on Coach Prime's face, you could see it on the player's face that even though this was a loss, it was a momentum loss. It was something that if you're a Colorado fan after this game, you can't wait to watch this team play again, right? Against a team that's not ranked 8th in the country, that has a chance to be a national championship team, going down to the desert at Arizona State, coming back home against Stanford. The next couple of weeks should be a lot of fun, and I'm going to pick Colorado to win both those football games. You're carrying a lot of momentum, I feel like, from the second half of this game into those contests.
And it's not just momentum. I guess this should be the theme for this podcast for the whole year. Is it's a game of faith, man. I keep saying it, and these kids believe. They're starting to believe that. What, we got waxed again, and I think this game, and I think the halftime of this game was a real decision point for this football team. Okay, you got worked and waxed at Oregon. You're getting blown out here at halftime by Southern Cal in consecutive weeks. A lot of CU teams in the last 10 or 15 years would have said, we're done, checking out, see you later, going to jack around on the sidelines, right? Not this team. This team got together and they talked about it. And I remember Juju Mitchell saying, look, you know what? We talked about it at halftime and we realized it was mostly just communication things that we were having trouble with. We got the communication figured out and we shut them down. And so they had a chance as a team to make a decision. Are we going to, it's, hey, this has been fun, but we're done now. Or are we going to fight back and keep showing people what we're made of? And I think you on some level, you can you feel the disappointment of losing, but you feel a hell of a lot of pride at being part of coming back against a team that good and really kind of dominating the last quarter of the game. And I think what sticks in the human mind is the most recent thing. And we beat their ass in the fourth quarter. We were a better team than them on both sides of the ball in the fourth quarter. And I think that's what gives you that feeling as you walk away from the game, like, hey, we're a pretty good team and we haven't even put it all together yet. We don't even know. We're still, we went into that second half down 3 of our starters in the secondary, down our right tackle, and we buckled it up and we punched those guys right in the mouth and we outpunched them. We just got a little bit too far behind in the first half to make that all up. So I think there are a lot of things that you take from this, and you feel pretty good about yourself. You feel pretty good about your teammates. And I wrote down a note. It's like we come out of a loss looking and feeling like big winners in a lot of ways. And one of those I wrote down faith in the players and themselves and the coaches and each other, growth as a team. Players got better. They played against top competition and they got better. Cormani McClain now believes he belongs at this level. Armarian Miller, I think, always believed he belonged at this level, but now he's showing everybody now the coaches and the quarterback have faith in him. This is a huge game in terms of national perception of our program, keeping us in the spotlight, recruiting. And I think this shows everybody. I don't think anybody's looking at this and going, hey, Southern Cal let down. I think everybody's looking at this and saying, hey, that Colorado team's got grit and they got some players.
They win the next 2 games, go on to have a winning season. I think we will look back to halftime of the USC game as a real turning point for this program. And
right.
To your point, there have been other opportunities in the past. I think most recently you look to like 2018 when they were up. They had a 5-0 start to the season. They have a big lead, 28-point lead on Oregon State. It falls apart, and that team just folded. They couldn't bounce back. And this is a Colorado squad that, again, because you're competing for your spot on this football team next year, and even if you're not going to be in Boulder, you're competing for a spot elsewhere because so many eyeballs are on the Buffaloes right now that there will be no quit in this football team. And I'm anxious to see how they respond out at Arizona State. Now, it could be a huge letdown spot if they don't get out to a better start. You got to start faster when you're going against Power 5 level competition, because they're not going to give you the opportunity like CSU did. Colorado was somewhat lucky in that football game with the start that they went out to. You got to go down to Tempe, and you got to get on the board quicker and have Shador on the same page with these receivers from the jump, because if they do that, then they're going to come out of the desert with a win.
Well, I think I got a couple thoughts on this, and I'm going to try to keep them in order here. But first of all, it's been my experience over 40 years in football that teams take on the personality of their head coach. Now, I'm not going to trash out Mike McIntyre, but he didn't have swagger, and he's kind of a soft guy, and he's kind of, quiet, whatever. And that team didn't believe because he didn't believe. This team is Prime's team, man. All the way from the top down to the ball guys and the trainers and whatever. And they have that swagger, and they have that sense of self-confidence and self-belief that, it's like some great coaches take a lesser guy and make him believe in himself, and he becomes a better guy, right? And this team believes in themselves because their coaches believe in them, and they're playing them. And there's some good talent on this team that's young. Like, I keep watching Bishop Thomas, and that guy plays like his hair is on fire, man. I'm constantly amazed at how he's a guy making a tackle on the sidelines all the way out, chasing down a quarterback or running down a receiver or whatever. And, he's only a second-year guy in college. He's going to get a lot better. Amari McNeil is really starting to make problems for teams on the defensive line. He's only a sophomore too. And so I'm just very excited to see. I think this team is just starting to gel. I think this offense is just starting to understand each other. I think that offensive line is starting to come together now. We'll see what happens with Washington and the right tackle, but I was encouraged to see Reggie Young come in, and, the offense functioned very well with him at that right tackle spot, and no apparent drop off. And again, I'm going to tell people, I would love to sit down and show film of people and show that this offensive line is doing better than people think it is. I can't change any minds, and I know people are going to say, well, you're just defending the offensive line, so I'm not going to argue too much about it, but I'm going to look for some plays to show people if I can get them up there to illustrate some of the good things this offensive line is doing. So I think they're starting to come together. I think Lewis is starting to get a feel for his personnel and how to use them, and I think that's going to make a difference. I think Kelly is starting to figure out who he can count on out there on defense. I felt like when they got really much more aggressive on defense on Saturday, they were much more effective. So, again, coaches have to learn their teams just like players have to learn their teams. So we're not even halfway through the season, and the trajectory is still at a solid upwards curve to me. So we're going to see a lot better football from this team moving forward than we already have, and that's against lesser teams.
Heading down to Arizona State, like I mentioned, I wish we could swap this and the Washington State game on the schedule. It feels like Colorado always gets Arizona State early in the conference slate, and when they travel down there in early October or late September, it's still freaking hot down there. I already know that Pullman is going to be miserable in late November, so we kind of got the short end of the stick in terms of the timing of these road trips. Aside from the Mel Tucker Shorts game, which they won down at Arizona State, there's been a lot of disappointing trips down to Sun Devil Stadium for the Buffs, and it's not really that intimidating of an environment, but it's also not I'm trying to explain. I went to Arizona State, so I'm not trying to be too derogatory towards my alma mater, but it's kind of a stale atmosphere. It doesn't have the college football feel that Folsom Field does, or that we experienced when we were at TCU. Right. It just is. And it's right there on campus too. I don't know. It's just something about that building doesn't have a lot of character in terms of just the overall vibe that you have throughout the game. It just feels more like a professional stadium.
Yeah, and it sort of feels like it's always been that way, like even way back in the '80s and whatever. You'd go into Arizona and they had the Desert Swarm and they had that sort of more of a college feel and on top of you and everything. But I don't know, Arizona State. I think we have to take them seriously, but I think we can match up and maybe frankly outmatch them with athletes. I don't know when we're going to start getting people back. But this is a game that we should win. Certainly, the odds makers have it looking that way. But Coach Prime has to make sure that these guys got their heads in the game. We don't, because you're right. We did have a letdown. We did have a change in attitude and emotion for that CSU game. And I guess, and to some extent, that's understandable. It's like we were at a fever pitch for TCU and Nebraska, and even though CSU's a rival, it's kind of hard to maintain that sort of, red line emotional status week after week after week. But it is also true that it seems very apparent now that we're going to get one part of the prime effect is everybody wants to take us down, and We're going to show Colorado, we're going to teach them reality and show them reality and blah, 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 whatever. And so everybody's going to give us their best shot, and I welcome that. I think real competitors welcome that as well, and I think it makes it mean even more when we beat them.
Are you going to be nervous going into that game? Because again, it's nice to have a team that is looked at as much more beatable on the schedule. Yet at the same time, there's a lot of pressure there. Colorado really needs to win this football game on Saturday.
I don't think this team feels pressure the way that other people do. And I think you look at that TCU, I guess there wasn't a lot of pressure. Nobody thought they'd win. But I don't think that they feel pressure because Coach Prime doesn't feel pressure. This guy's been at the highest levels of two different sports and performed well at that level. So he certainly doesn't feel pressure. And if it doesn't come from him, where's it going to come from? Right. So I don't know. There's nothing about Arizona State. They're not a rival. They're not ranked. There's nothing about them that kind of makes them look scary or whatever. They don't have any kind of super great player, but we just have to perform. I think going out the rest of the season, it's really about how we perform more than how the other team performs, and we're going to make our own destiny because we should be able to beat every team that comes along the rest of the way. And I'm not saying we're going undefeated, but there's nobody really left that can't be beat. We played the two best teams on our schedule with mixed results, and the second time around we looked a lot better. So I'm encouraged that we took a beating like that and we grew from it and got better.
All right, William. Well, that was fun to recap, even though it was a loss. Again, I feel like the momentum is on the side of the Colorado Buffaloes. Appreciate you, and hopefully another winning post podcast. We can get back to those ways next Monday. How does that sound?
Yeah, and I think you asked about am I nervous for the game. Anybody who's been a fan of the Buffs for the last 15 years is still nervous going into games because I can believe all I want, but back here in my little reptile part of my brain, I'm reliving 57-7 against Missouri, and Fresno State and Sacramento State and getting our butts kicked and can't win one game in the last 7 games of the season, and that's just sort of pounded into me, and so what's nice now is when I watch every game with a sense of possibility and a sense of hope, that I don't have to go into this thinking, well, I know we're going to get worked. I expect to win every game from here on out the rest of this season, even Utah, who's looking human this year. So I'm excited about it and I'm encouraged about it. I welcome any and all people that want to get on the bandwagon, better late than never. And I think this thing's going to be growing. And I was just thinking this morning, life's a funny thing, how did I come to be here at this moment? And how did we get this guy, Coach Prime, to coach our team after the futility of the last few years, and now the sheer excitement and joy and fun of it all is really kind of why you follow the game in the first place, right? And I go back to the being around in the 80s when we went from worst to best in that time, and it's going to go a lot faster this time, I think, with the transfer portal and what have you. And I guess I'm just sort of waiting for the um, some of the recruiting to start paying off with some of those kinds of guys coming. And the other thing that occurred to me as I was watching that game was we got all those kids on the sidelines, all those high-ranking guys. And one thing they got to see was two true freshmen go out there and ball out. And what that says to those kids is, you can play, you're going to play. You ain't get to, you don't have to come here and sit. So I think that was good timing.
So it was about a year ago then that your wife gave you the ultimatum with CU football that this is not good for you. You might need to divorce yourself from CU football. And now a year later, here we are. What was it about when Carl Durrell got fired that you got that message from her?
Well, no, I think we just, I don't want her painted in the wrong light. I think we just had a long discussion about it. It's like, I think it was before the season, even, we had to talk about whether we were going to go up to games or not. And it's just like, this is not good for you. It's not enjoyable. It's not fun.
Yeah.
You're not a good person when you're around this because there's nothing positive coming out of it. And, it was rough times on the board and rough times in the stadium. And there was just nothing, at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun. I'm not getting a paycheck out of this. So if it's not fun, why go up there and get, kicked in the junk every week,
Well, it is fun now though. So
yeah, for sure. And so, that's, I think, those, and I think that also should hopefully keep people in perspective when they're complaining about an offensive coordinator, who's the most prolific offensive coordinator we've had in 30 years. Is remember where we were a year ago, we couldn't even complete a pass, and now we're scoring 40 points a game. So are there things that can be fixed and can be better? Yeah, but we ought to be pretty happy with what we got.
well said, William. Let's end the show there. Again, I'm headed down to Arizona. I might as well be covering the games from space there. Their press box is so high up. So everybody else out there will have a better vantage point of the Arizona State game than I will. But I'll try to rewatch that. And then hopefully William and I can do a podcast next Monday. Thanks as always for tuning in.
And you'll get a photo of yourself with the Adam Munsterteiger statue on campus.
Sadly, that's just not there yet. I don't know what we need. No, I don't want it there at Arizona State. I had a great time as a student there, but I spent 5 years because I was working through college at Arizona State. I've spent 20 years living in Colorado. At what point am I a Buff versus a Sun Devil? When does that take place? Do I need to put another 20 years in?
No, it's pretty clearly you're a Buff. You're part of the family now. So
okay.
No.
Well, I will take it. And
yeah.
No, it's been great. The great thing about everybody being so excited is that you go anywhere around Boulder and I got CU fans coming up to me and I love hearing their stories. And it's just been so great to see people in a good mood again.
Yeah,
it's been a long time. It's been a lot of handshakes in the past about, I appreciate your work, but I don't subscribe because I'm so frustrated or, I just can't do it right now. Kind of like you were talking about just a few minutes ago. So to see everybody all in on where Colorado's headed, it's been really cool. And this podcast has gotten more popular, which has been fun. And I enjoy the fact that folks have really enjoyed your contributions because, folks would kind of lash out in the past when teams, when the Buffs were losing. It was hard to blame them, but it was tough on our end covering this stuff too.
Right. Because I think people, it's like battered. It's like, I work with domestic violence victims, and they often lash out at me because I'm the only safe person they can lash out at. Not to make an equivalence between those two things, but yeah, I think that a lot of times people, we were the more visible faces. They can't yell at the coaches, so they could take it out on us.
Yeah, no, I understood that all those years, but yeah, no, just to be able to see the joy, as you say, that Coach Prime hands out like candy, it's been cool. And so, I can't cheer in the press box, but this is a win that Buffs need to go get because it'll make the next few months a lot more palatable if they continue to, bounce back and get back in the winning ways.
Right. Absolutely. Get back in that top 25 and get us to a bowl game.
Sounds good. All right, William, anything else you want to share before we sign off here?
No, I think we're good. We'll have some fun next week, and I'll see you next Sunday or Monday.
All right, sounds good. And as always, thanks to everybody out there for tuning in.